This content is rated M for mature, as we're going to be discussing a bit of a deeper subject.
Lollipop, lollipop, oh lolly, 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 lollipop, lollipop, oh lolly, 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 lollipop, lollipop, oh lolly, 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 lollipop.
Boom, 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 boom.
Do you indeed think that there is life on other planets? Do you think there's life on other planets?
Oh, I don't know.
Tell me, do you think there is life on other planets?
Well, I'm not quite sure, but I suppose there would be.
No, he seems definite.
How does a person get to be popular with lots of people and have a few close friends, too?
There's no waistline worry with Coke, you know.
I think that husbands should help with the weekend housework.
It all depends what chores they've got to do themselves.
How's it organized at your house?
To most, this particular era of American history will never be quite understood.
It's fun to eat supper with your family, especially when there is good food on the table. Strong, healthy bodies. They are good foods to eat. Father is certainly enjoying his supper. So is Carol. So is Mother. Just look at that plate. Aren't you feeling well, Bill? Aren't you hungry? What can be the matter?
Commonly referred to as the post-war era. The 1950s and 60s was our first true glimmer in restoring civilization, overcoming the Great Depression, World War II, and eventually leading to the Civil Rights Movement. With the men at work or permanently absent from the picture, women were left at home to take care of the kids. Food was scarce, rationed, and shared.
Ration books. Apply now for the new ration book for food, the personal ration book, the clothing book. And don't forget your identity card.
The common family didn't have spare money to even see a movie which costed 69 cents. To put that into perspective, that's equivalent to $4 in today's time. In 1949, a couple by the name of Lester and Betty would move to Indiana, where they would settle down and seek the American dream. Unfortunately for them, Lester and Betty weren't the wealthiest, being born into poverty, but still making ends meet. Betty would eventually conceive 5 children: Jenny, Diana, Danielle, Benny, and Sylvia. Benny and Danielle worked with their father at the carnival. Diana was one of the eldest, starting a life of her own. Jenny and Sylvia, on the other hand, stayed with their mother at home. In 1965, Betty was arrested for shoplifting, leaving Jenny and Sylvia alone with no one to care for them. The two were eventually invited by a friend named Paula Benzeski to listen to music on the record and play board games back at her house. Gretchen, the mother of Paula, overheard Jenny and Sylvia's dilemma and offered to let them stay a few nights until they figured out what to do in the time being. Lester would eventually hear of Betty's incarceration, locating the girls at Gretchen's house on East New York Street. Lester stated that when Betty gets out, she's gonna join him in the carnival, traveling the entire world. Gretchen would offer to look after the 2 girls for $20 a week, as she could desperately use the money. She was already caring for 7 kids of her own, plus herself. Lester would agree, leaving Jenny and Sylvia in the care of their new babysitter, Gretchen Benzeski. I honestly find it heartbreaking. Had the parents took any time into assuring the safety of these girls, things might have been a bit different. The first few weeks was quite delightful. The girls enjoyed their new company, Gretchen would make some extra money, and Lester wasn't restrained and could commit his entire time to his job. Everything seemed fine, until Lester would be late on a single payment. Going into a rage, Gretchen would punish the girls for Lester's incompetence, spanking the girls over their bare bottoms with a 2-inch thick paddle, screaming, "I took care of you bitches for no reason." The next following weeks, the girls did what many people did in the 60s and 70s. Collect empty Coke bottles and cash them for extra money. Upon arriving home, Gretchen caught the girls with the money and accused them of stealing or selling their body. As another form of punishment, Gretchen would burn Sylvia's fingertips with a book of matches. Later that week, the Benzeskis' children had informed Gretchen that Sylvia was eating way too much food at a Sunday church service. As another form of punishment, that same day when it was time to eat, Sylvia's food was ordered to be passed around the table of 7 children, as each child would add an extreme amount of condiments to it, making the food unbearable to eat. Sylvia was forced to eat the mess. As a result, she would regurgitate the food, but then immediately forced to scoop up her own vomit and eat it. Betty would be released from jail that following week, and the couple would visit the girls for the first time together. The girls didn't tell their parents about the abuse, presumably because Gretchen had threatened them with more abuse had they told. At this point, most of the abuse have been directed towards Sylvia. It's said that Sylvia was overprotective of her sister Jenny, who may have been suffering from polio, a potentially fatal condition, or that Gretchen was resentful towards Sylvia because of how youthful she was.
About what to do on a date, I mean. But what I'd like to know is, how can you figure out what a girl would like to do? A certain girl, I mean.
Is he good company? He always seems so quiet.
We get along all right. He's got a good sense of humor, and we haven't run out of things to say yet.
He's kind of cute. You gonna date him again?
I don't know. Besides, he hasn't asked me. George, get out of there.
I'm hungry.
If you want to do something, take the Cokes out there.
When Gretchen would overhear that Sylvia had laid with the boy, Gretchen would kick Sylvia in the genital, announcing to the children, "Sylvia let a boy get her pregnant. Sylvia's a prostitute and she's proud." Yet another form of punishment, Sylvia was forced to perform sexual acts with a Coke bottle in front of the other children. This type of humiliation and torment would continue for the next few months. When Gretchen got tired from all the beatings and couldn't physically continue them, she ordered the other kids to take part, to which they did. A family by the name of Vermillion moved into the neighborhood and witnessed the abuse firsthand. Sylvia was beat with a leather belt and burned with hot water when asked who gave her those wounds. Unfortunately, Phyllis Vermillion failed to report the abuse. At this time, the abuse would get more and more rampant. Sylvia would be beat by the neighborhood kids, Paula's boyfriend, and the other children who lived in the house. Sylvia would be ordered to strip tease for the neighborhood boys, charging 5 cents per kid, burned with hot water, thrown around, and beaten continuously. As a result in this physical, mental, and emotional abuse, Sylvia began wetting the bed, to which Gertrude was not forgiving. Sylvia was declared unfit to live with the rest of the kids and banished to live in the cold, dark basement, with no bed, no toilet, no clothes. Sylvia would rarely be given food, and when she was, it would either be food that was rotten, her own feces, or just enough to feed a rat. Along with being starved, Sylvia was subjected to horrible torture methods, such as tying her hands to the railing, making it uncomfortable for her to relax. One night, Jenny snuck out of bed to see her sister locked in the basement, beaten, bruised, and filthy. Jenny stated that Sylvia said, "I know you don't want me to die, but I'm going to die. I can tell it." By this time, a boy by the name of Richard Hobbs, who lived in the area, would frequently help in Sylvia's torture. It said that Richard was in a relationship with Gertrude, as he would do anything for her, even if it was totally out of character. One day, Sylvia's older sister Diana would visit the house, but would be shooed away by Gertrude, claiming she didn't have permission to be here and she'll call the cops if she don't leave. Concerned about her sister's safety, Diana called social services, to which the police would later arrive at the Grinzetskis' residence. Gertrude claimed that Sylvia had gotten those wounds after running away, then later returning in that condition. They believed her story, and the police were called off with no further inquiries. By this time, Sylvia was completely incoherent. One witness claimed she looked as if she didn't care if she was alive or dead. One day, Sylvia was ordered out of the basement into the kitchen, where Gertrude had thought of a new form of punishment. She grabbed a sewing needle and started to heat it up under the fire, saying, "You branded my family, now we're gonna brand you." Gertrude started to carve the letters I, M. As she couldn't physically continue, Richard Hobbs was then ordered to continue the branding, going as far as writing it out on a piece of paper so he wouldn't spell it incorrectly. "I am a prostitute, and I am proud of it," was branded on Sylvia's skin. After the branding was complete, the kids didn't feel like that was enough, so they branded Sylvia a second time. This time with a giant 3, which was later testified to be an S. That following day, Gertrude had formulated a plan. Sylvia was allowed to come out from the dungeon to which she was trapped in. Instead of scorching hot water and pouring salt on her wounds, she was able to take a normal shower. Instead of being naked and deprived of food, she was clothed and fed. Sylvia was then forced to handwrite a letter that stated, "To Mr. and Mrs. Likens, I went with a gang of boys in the middle of the night and they said that they would pay me if I would give them something. So, I got in the car and they all got what they wanted, and when they got finished, they beat me up and left sores on my face and all over my body. They also put on my stomach, 'I am a prostitute and I am proud of it.' I have done just about everything that I could do just to make Gertie mad and cost Gertie more money than she's got. I've tore up the new mattress, I've peed on it. I have also cost Gertie doctor bills she really can't pay and made Gertie a nervous wreck and all her kids." After the letter was written, Sylvia was ordered back into the dungeon, where she would be beaten on numerous occasions for multiple reasons. One particular day, majority of the neighborhood kids was invited to the Grinzetskis' basement, essentially to watch the last words of a dying girl. As Sylvia would be blasted with cold water, she would make one final attempt to escape her torturers. She was kicked and stomped on before she could even reach the stairs. Sylvia looked up from the ground and started pointing sporadically, saying, "You're Gertrude, you're Paula," before being beat again and again. Sylvia took her last breath and died that following day. Gertrude, thinking Sylvia was pretending, started hitting her in the head saying, "You're faking." When it became apparent that Sylvia was indeed deceased, they dressed her up nicely and threw her on the bed, called the police, and told them the story they had been rehearsing. They stated she ran away and returned in this condition. They then proceeded to show the police the handwritten letter. When Jenny would secretly tell one of the cops, "Get me out of here and I'll tell you everything," she was quickly taken into custody of the police, to which Jenny would go on and tell the story of the murder of her sister Sylvia.
All I did was write out that thing on her stomach, and then I hit her about 10 or 15 times.
How come?
Well, mostly because Gertie told me to. She refused food. We tried to give her soup every once in a while and stuff like that, and she wouldn't take it.
Well, how about these scratch marks on her stomach? Who put them on her?
I did.
Why?
Well, Gertie just thought of it. She said, "Since you branded us, we're going to brand you." So she etched it in with a pen, and I went over it. She showed me how to do it, and I went over it. I did it.
Did you ever use any hot irons on her?
No. Yeah, that 3 on her stomach, I did half of that, and Shirley Ann did the other half.
Where'd the S come from?
What do you mean?
There's a big S branded on her stomach, right over one of her breasts.
That's what I'm talking about.
Well, that's what you're talking about. Well, how about the inscription on there, I'm a prostitute and proud of it. Who put that on?
I did.
Did you scratch it on there, paint it on there? How'd you do it?
Well, like I said before, Gertie wrote it down there with a pen, and I did the rest. She showed me how to do it then.
Had Gertie abused this girl?
Yeah.
Gertrude Baniszewski, however, had a different story.
I did never beat that girl. Never. She was beat up on by other girls. In fact, my own daughter stopped her in the jaw and broke her wrist. And so, I mean, there you go. And girls around the neighborhood beat her up, bloodied her nose. One girl broke her nose, in fact, I think.
Were you ever in contact with the police on any of these occasions?
Well, in the last 2 weeks, in fact, I think if he'd talked to my daughters, I'd ask him that. The children's father and I are divorced, and he's the policeman in each where was. And I've asked the girls repeatedly to call their dad and ask him what to do.
I still have to live with this every day, and it's terrible. You just don't know what it does.
Many people in the community had not forgiven Gertrude Baniszewski. While she visited with reporters before driving away, a car drove by on the street outside the prison, and the passenger yelled, "Shoot that bitch." Her eyes darted toward the sound with a look of pain or fear easily read in them. Bill Donnella, WIBC News.